This is our second week of thinking together about the 5 aspects of the vows of participating in the ministry of the church family. We talk about that often: our prayers, our presence, our gifts, our service, and our witness. And today I want to think with you about presence. That means showing up. Last week I shared with you that I knew about a church in Kansas one time that you didn't just join that church once. Every year you kind of decided whether to renew your membership or not. It didn't just carry over to another year. They would ask each person, do you still commit to these 5 vows? When I look at the number of members on our church roll, and then when I look at the number of members in the pews on Sunday, I'm beginning to think maybe that was a good idea. It certainly goes against the grain for us, but some of us need to answer that question. Do I still commit myself to prayers, presence, gifts, service, and witness? There are a lot of bad reasons to go to church. One of them is guilt or obligation, something we just do out of habit, although, habits aren't necessarily a bad thing. If you get in the habit of brushing your teeth, your dental health will prosper. Healthy habits and holy habits can be a good thing, but it's time to sometimes ask ourselves, why do I show up? Our Catholic brothers and sisters show up because the presence of Jesus Christ is presented to them at Mass in a very tangible way. When you ask a Catholic friend, what did you get out of that service? They have an easy answer: Jesus. That's why I came. I didn't come to be entertained. I didn't come for music that suits my fancy or for the ramblings of a priest that were rather entertaining. I came because Christ was being presented. I think we could learn so much from our Catholic brothers and sisters. Sometimes we Methodists are too pragmatic, and we begin to think about things very subjectively. And sometimes you'll even hear people say, well, I went to church and I didn't get anything out of it. I'm just glad God doesn't strike us with lightning when we say that. I didn't get anything out of it. First of all, who's giving what? This is not for the preacher and the choir to give you something. It's for you to give. Oh, I started preaching here. Bear with me. But it's for you to give something to God. We might well ask the question after a worship service, God, did you get anything out of it? Now, that would be a more practical question, because worship is directed not from God to us. Worship is directed from us to God. As I think about the importance of presence, I begin to think, we're at that time of year when we fill out estimate of giving cards, where we help the church to plan its ministries based on our anticipated giving for the coming year. What if we were to fill out a card for 2026? Out of 52 Sundays, how often am I going to be there? If you sent your child to school for 1 hour a week, you wouldn't expect very much. You would think, how much can they possibly learn 1 hour a week? But when we think about 1 hour of worship a week, we think, oh, I'm not sure I can do that. It's no wonder that we sometimes don't get much out of worship when we don't put all that much into it. As I think about the vow of presence, I think about something I read not too long ago from a great friend. E.B. Beasley is a retired pastor in Texas, and I've known him for over 40 years, and our journeys have crossed many, many times. Many are the times when E.B. and his wife Lori would host a New Year's Day gathering, one holiday a year where you didn't have church services, and pastors and spouses could just get together and have good food together and talk and have a great time together. It was always a wonderful memory. Not too long ago, E.B. wrote this. He's a little bit older than me, and his health has not been great, but he wrote this about attending church, and let me just share it with you. E.B. says, if you and I have been at the same place recently, maybe in a car or in a worship service, you have seen that I have major trouble staying awake. I do not know what you think when you see it, but I confess that it is embarrassing to me every time and every place. Lori used to be embarrassed, but she has dealt with it enough that she can handle it. The simple explanation is that I have several physical issues that gang up on me and make it impossible for me to sleep at night until I'm totally tired and exhausted. 3 hours of sleep is a good night for me. So if I get still for too long during the day, I almost always fall asleep. I can preach a worship service any day, but I have trouble sitting still to listen to a service, even from a very fine preacher. I will be honest. I am very tempted to stay home from church worship services or any other meeting or activity. It's embarrassing to wake up and wonder how many people have been watching, but I go anyway, and I think that I have a pretty good reason. Lori and I were married in September of 1976 while I was doing my internship. The following June, we moved to the first appointment where we would present ourselves as husband and wife. It was an interesting appointment. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I was seminary in Dallas. On Tuesday and Thursday, I was a campus minister, and I was pastor of the church on the days that were left. Nan and Moselle were two precious saints at Avenger, Texas, my very first church, and they taught me that the most important things a pastor can do is visit their homebound members on a regular basis, and I had bought into that hook, line, and sinker. And then I did that every month at Murkison as well, taking Holy Communion with me. One of the saints that I saw each month was Rufus. If my memory is correct, he was 91 years old and had retired from working on the railroad. Rufus was a grand person, and visiting him was a welcome tonic each time. His eyes were failing him. He could read the license plate on any vehicle across the street, but he could not read our monthly newsletter. His hearing was so bad that he had hearing aids for both ears, but his arthritis and gout were so bad that he could not adjust them. Fortunately, there was one nurse who could adjust them when she was on duty. His walking was so bad that he used 2 canes, one in each hand, to wobble down the hall on those odd times when he left his room to go anywhere. And his voice sounded like he had a mouthful of gravel when he spoke. I loved to visit Rufus. He was so positive and so much fun to listen to, and he had the most wonderful stories to tell. I miss him every time I think about it. He did more for the pastor than his pastor was ever able to do for him. The nurses loved to tell the story of the time he would head to the dining room for the weekly worship service. The week of this story, I wasn't there, but a nurse told me about it. A new nurse was on duty that week as Rufus made his way down the hall. She watched him struggle with each step, and she knew that when he arrived, he would not be able to see the words of any hymn, much less sing. He would not hear any of the words that were sung or spoken. Watching him struggle down the hallway, she walked up and got his attention and asked him, Sir, it is so hard for you to walk to the service, and when you get there, you won't be able to sing the songs or hear everyone else sing or hear the preacher preach. Why do you go to so much trouble every week to go to those services when you can't possibly get anything out of it? Rufus was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at her and said, Huh? She repeated the question, taking time to let him listen to her and then giving her his answer. Rufus said, I want to endorse what the preacher is saying. And then he resumed his journey to the dining room. Rufus did not go to worship to get anything out of it. He went to give everything he had to the service and to the celebration of the grace of God. So yes, I could easily stay home, says E.B. I could avoid embarrassing myself. It would be a lot less trouble. And I confess that I do hope to get something out of the service, and being with God's people is always good to me. But every church that I visit, I try to explain to the pastor that if they see me sleeping, please do not be offended, but please allow me to endorse what they and the congregation are doing that day. And now I ask the same of you on behalf of myself and many other people in the pews. We used to joke that some people go home from the service inspired and others go home well rested. But now you know that like Rufus of long ago, I go to endorse what the preacher is saying and what the congregation is doing. I hope that you are there when I arrive. As Paul Harvey used to say for so many years, and now you know the rest of the story. I really loved what E.B. had to write, and I hope you'll take it to heart. And when Sunday rolls around and you're trying to decide, do I hit the alarm or do I get up and go? What am I going to get out of this Sunday? Maybe you'll remember E.B.'s story, and maybe you'll remember the story of Rufus, and maybe you will look at attendance, presence in a whole new light. Thanks for sharing this time with me.